Good morning, everybody. Pastor Johnson, Trinity, Manila, but I'm not in Manila right now. I'm actually experiencing part two of our Missouri vacation. We had actually come home to Manila after we were in the Springfield, Branson area visiting my parents. And now we're in the opposite corner of the state. So we're in the northeast part visiting my wife's in laws, her parents, my in laws. So we're in a little place called Green Top, Missouri, which is outside of Kirksville, Missouri. But that all said, good to be with you virtually. Uh, Wanted to come to you and talk to you a little bit about the discouragement that can come with the holidays, but specifically with this year, or kind of the end of last year into this year. Um, I think there could be some level of discouragement when it comes to worship when we're with people, because maybe there's not as many people as before. We saw this with Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve at Trinity was incredible. We had more people than we've had in the sanctuary than at any point during the last year, but maybe not as many as the year prior to that. Um, we're still building. I know Zion's still building. I know Trinity's still building. I know lots of congregations are still building, but it can still be hard because some people may be safer at home, but there's still fewer people at worship, and that can become discouraging. I just visited my home congregation this last weekend for worship on Sunday, and it was good to see everybody. But one of the hard things was there weren't as many people as there typically are on a Sunday, and so I didn't get to see all of my old friends and mentors and just people I really love. I didn't get to see everybody, so it can become discouraging because when we see these lower amounts of people, we wonder if there's something wrong with us, wrong with church, wrong with what God is up to. And I was just finishing up reading it's really just a sermon, but it's called Encouragement for the Depressed. Encouragement for the Depressed. And it was written by a Baptist minister, Charles Spurgeon, a long time ago. But he had some really fantastic insight about what God has to say to us in the midst of our discouragement, especially discouragement that is associated when church may not feel like church. So here's the verse. The verse comes from a prophet named Zechariah. And so you remember that the prophets, all their writings are in the Old Testament leading up to the New Testament. And this particular prophet, Zechariah, was helping with the reconstruction of the temple in Jerusalem, which had been destroyed. And Zechariah has this to say: "For whoever has despised the day of small things, they shall rejoice, and shall see the plumb line in the hand of Zerubbabel." Now, I know there's a lot going on there. But again, what was happening in this time is that the temple had been completely wiped out. And the people are progressively returning to Jerusalem after several years of functional slavery. And their temple, their church, isn't there anymore. And there were people there who remembered their church, their temple, the way it was before they had left Israel for slavery in another land. And it shook them to their core. And then Zechariah, along with a guy named Zerubbabel, were responsible for rebuilding this temple of Solomon. But the thing was, the temple was not as large, it was not as magnificent as Solomon's temple. And so when the foundation was laid by Zerubbabel, many people wept because it wasn't like what it was before, and they were discouraged, and they wanted to go back to the glory days. But Zechariah the prophet says, look, for whoever has despised the day of small things shall rejoice. When we see smaller things, when we see things that are not as magnificent, when we don't see the numbers of people like we had before, we become discouraged. But the reality is, God is still at work in the midst of his people, whether there's 100 or maybe just 2. Remember what Jesus says, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am also. So when people are working towards forgiveness from one another, even if it's just a handful of people, Jesus is still in the midst of them. The Lord of the world, the creator of the universe, is still in their midst, even though it's a small group of people. And Charles Spurgeon has this to say. Well, some have, but there is a great comfort in this. God the Father has not. He has looked upon you, you with little grace and little love and little faith, and he has not despised you. No, God is always near the feeble saints. So even when we are small, even when our groups are tinier than before, uh, God is still there among his people. He's among us in things like Holy Communion. And I know obviously not everyone's been able to experience that lately, but you're still encouraged either to contact myself or Pastor Connor to receive Holy Communion, even if it's in a small private moment. Where I know Pastor Connor has those Thursday services once a month for communion, even if it's a small group. Even in those small groups or kind of on a one-on-one basis, the God of the universe is showing up to offer himself to you in Holy Communion, even if it's only a few people. He's showing up and giving us truth through the technology. Obviously, we've had to rely a great deal on technology lately, whether it's the morning devotions or worship, whatever. Even in those moments, even though it's not like what we would like it to be, it's not like before. God is still showing up and bringing his truth to you, right? You still get to know and understand and experience God, even though there are some barriers, right? And maybe the incredible thing is that when it came to Israel and they looked at the foundation of the temple, and even though it wasn't as great as it was before under Solomon, and it shook them, it hurt them, they were discouraged by it all. The incredible thing is that God was still building up to do his greatest work in that moment, because the people had not experienced Jesus, the Son of God, yet. And the same thing holds true for you today. Even though maybe our worship services don't have as many people as before, maybe you are discouraged because of some sort of other issue at church or whatever. The reality is, God is still going to do his best work yet. Right. Even though it's not like it was before, the best is still on the horizon, because soon Jesus of Nazareth, the Son of God, is going to return and make things right again. And as we wait for that day, even though it might be with fewer saints than before, as we all wait together, one day Jesus is going to show up and reunite us with himself, along with all of his saints from throughout all generations of time. And that's going to be a pretty cool day. And there will be a lot of rejoicing. So here's the point. Even though you might be discouraged right now because of smaller attendance, because of something that isn't the way that it was before at church, God is still working in the midst of his people, even in the small things. And so that's cause for rejoicing, because God is his size, his power, his faithfulness has not changed at all. And it's still showing up in the midst of his people. That all said, I think I see some comments. Let's see. Good morning from Betty. Good to see you. Zane says good morning. Connie, good morning to you. Karen, good morning. See Kathy. I think Kathy gave us a heart back. Let's see. Audrey, Spurgeon Morning and Evening Devotions is my reading. Perfect. If you haven't gotten this book, Encouragement for the Depressed, it was really good. I just finished it yesterday. Shirley says good morning, and then and Connie says thanks, Pastor Ed. I need to hear this one. So Connie had 2 comments. So Connie, good to have you. That all said, Trinity Manila is going to get back to its regular worship schedule. I will be coming back along with Deaconess Tiffany on Wednesday for confirmation. And then Saturday, 3 p.m., we will have our David Bible study before worship. And then we will have worship at 4 p.m. And then Zion, you're at your typical 9 a.m. and you'll have worship either on Facebook Live or in person. And thank you to Pastor Connor for covering at Trinity this weekend, along with Timothy for playing. Really appreciate it. Gave Tiffany and I some time to get away and see some family. But of course, we're always looking forward to getting back and seeing all you guys. That all said, the Lord be with you and be safe.